What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is your newest analyst who has hands down the worst possible mic in all of mankind, DOZ Gunner, here bringing you people the week 1 of the free agency and trade transactions. Now, before I get started into this, there may be some people that may not fully understand how this works. So I'm just going to give you guys a quick explanation of it right now, which pretty much revolves around the fact that once the drafting is over, each and every single coach will have the liberty to drop any 3 Pokemon of their choosing, minus their megas, where they have 2 choices. One of them being the fact that they can communicate with another coach, and from there they can strike up a deal where they can exchange mons with each other, or go to the free agency program where they can drop that specific Pokemon of their choosing and get back the points which they used to draft that Pokemon in the first place, and with that they can use it to draft the Pokemon of their choosing, while maintaining the main rules of having at least 1 Tier 1 Pokemon, 1 Tier 2 Pokemon, 2 Tier 3 Pokemon, 1 Tier 4 Pokemon, and last but not least, 1 Tier 5 Pokemon. Not only that, but once you decide to drop one of your mons, that basically counts as 1 transaction. And if you decide to drop all 3 of your mons as a whole, that will count as 3 transactions. And once all 3 transactions are done, you are literally done and you will not be able to do this for the remainder of the season. So yeah, that's basically it for how the trade transactions work. So with that being said, let's move on to the very first coach who decided to use all 3 of his transactions, and he is the founder of the St. Louis Rampardos, Dan aka A-Drive, who decided to drop his Keldeo, Fortress, and Muck for Heracross, Blastoise, and Smeargle. Now, as far as these changes is concerned, I actually think that it does benefit Dan in a way, and at the same time put him on a stalemate, if you ask me. And I'm going to give you guys a quick explanation of why I think that way. Because as far as the pros go, let's compare Fortress and Blastoise. Now granted, while Fortress is a much more superior physical wall in standard play, it is still a very well known fact that here in the league format, quad weaknesses are severely punished. Because your opponent literally knows what Pokemon you have in your roster, and it's because of that he can choose to use one of his Pokemon to pack a certain move which beats that specific Pokemon with the quad 4 weaknesses 1v1. And if you guys aren't believing what I'm saying, just take week 1 for example, where in the match of Gubs versus Tup, where Tup's HP Ice Ambipom almost sent that Gliscor flying off the 3DS screen. Or George versus Lars, where George's Scizor literally got 420 no-scoped by HP Fire Cobalion. So with all that being considered, I think it's not a very wise idea for having a Pokemon that has ×4 weak to fire as one of your main walls. And it's because of that I think that Dan hit the home run on this one, if you ask me. Because in my humble opinion, Blastoise is a very good Pokemon in the league format, and it's a much more superior spinner than Fortress because of the reason that I mentioned above. And granted, while it does not take physical hits as well as Fortress, it still can be bulky on both sides, mind you, and has a much more wider move pool than Fortress ever will have. Because other than Gyro Ball, setting up spikes, rocks, toxic spikes, and blowing itself up, Fortress is pretty much as one-dimensional as it gets. However, Blastoise, on the other hand, has access to moves like Scald, Ice Beam, Dark Pulse, Aura Sphere, Toxic, Rapid Spin, and so many moves in general. And at the same time, while it does not have the most reliable source of recovery, it can still rest up on your face. While Fortress is pretty much just standing there and being like, "Derp, why don't you just kill me right here, right now?" Lol. So with all that being considered, I think Blastoise is a much more superior choice here, if you ask me. Not to mention the fact that one of the main cons with Fortress is that once it's in, it pretty much just loses your momentum as a whole. It's pretty much just standing there waiting for you to end its life, and it pretty much gives you the scope to switch out. Unless it's packing Volt Switch, of course, but that's pretty much situational, if you ask me, and you may be reluctant on using that move, especially if your opponent packs a ground type that can beat Fortress, mind you, with HP Fire, because counter teaming is a huge thing, in case you didn't notice. So, and while Blastoise, on the other hand, literally has access to one of the most skilled move of all time, second to T-Wave of course, by the name of Scald. So basically, if you decide to switch out one of your mons on Blastoise and he decides to go for a Scald and burn you, that pretty much puts you in a stalemate here. And quite frankly, Fortress can't do any of that. So with all that being considered, I think Blastoise is a much more superior Pokemon. And coming from a guy who has legitimate experience in using it, I can tell you with utmost confidence that the things this turtle is capable of is extremely overwhelming, mind you. You just gotta think deep, and trust me when I tell you, Dan, if you're listening to what I'm saying right now, if you do enough research on this, you're gonna find some pretty fun things. Trust me. So yeah, that's basically it for Fortress and Blastoise. Now let's move on to by comparing Muck and Smeargle. Now honestly, I actually see where Dan is coming from, because by losing Fortress, he was losing a Stealth Rocker, a Toxic Spiker, or a Spiker. Basically, he was losing his Hazard Setter. And to make sure that he did not lose that luxury, he decided to get rid of his Muck and get Smeargle in the process. And from what I'm being led to believe right now, he probably thought that Muck was the least useful Pokemon in his roster, which is why he decided to get rid of it and get Smeargle in the first place. And honestly, I don't know how to feel about it, because while Smeargle, mind you, actually can be very effective in terms of putting things to sleep and setting up hazards all over your face, the thing is, once again, this is the league format, and C-teaming is literally the center of this competition. So Dan's opponent can pretty much bring up a Taunt user and flat out cripple that Smeargle and just leave it to die just like that. And while I get the fact that Bright Powder is a thing, that pretty much means that it's just dying once the opposing Pokemon just decides to go use a move on it. So all in all, Dan is pretty much putting himself in a 50-50 situation. So if his opponent decides to just go for an attacking move right off the bat, and he's packing the Mental Herb, it is gonna blow up in his face extremely bad, and that's pretty much a dead Smeargle just like that. So all in all, I honestly don't think that he should have done that, because he's just playing with luck right now. And for all we know, it may just come back to blow up on his face each and every single matches. But we'll see. Now last but not least, let's move on to Keldeo and Heracross. Now, I'm honestly having mixed emotions about it, to be honest, because these two Pokemon have specific roles, and they are both extremely effective in the league format, mind you. Trust me. And the thing is, they both have certain traits that cannot be replaced with one another, if you ask me. So let's start off by comparing the strong points about Heracross. Now, in all honesty, Heracross is the kind of Pokemon that can have various roles in competitive playing, and especially in the league format, the best part is, since you know exactly what your opponent has, you can adjust your variant for which it suits the playstyle the best, and use it to beat your opponent. And Heracross can be the kind of Pokemon where it can be a God's Choice Banded user, where literally going for a Will-O-Wisp on it can just put you on your deathbed. And not only that, it has access to moves like Knock Off, Close Combat, Mega Horn, Stone Edge, Earthquake, and I could go on and on and on and on and on. And as far as the wall-breaking Choice Banded variant goes, unless you're a Landorus Terrain, you pretty much have to sack something. So with all that being considered, Heracross can actually work very well as a wall breaker. Not to mention the fact that he can also be a Choice Scarf Moxie Sweeper, which means that if Dan does get enough chip damage on each and every single Pokemon of his opponent's team, then the opponent's counter to Choice Scarf Moxie Heracross is pretty much hoping that Dan's internet dies. So with all that being considered, Heracross can actually be a very effective Pokemon if Dan uses it properly. And in all honesty, it can actually work well for his team in the end. However, it must also be noted that when you compare Heracross's speed with Keldeo, you're pretty much being put on a stalemate here, because Heracross's speed isn't the best, like at all. So if you're gonna run the Choice Banded Wall Breaker variant, then you're pretty much putting yourself on a stalemate here, because you're gonna get outsped by a lot of things. And when I look at each and every single roster here in the GBA, they're bound to outspeed Heracross and flat out just kill it. And not only that, but when I look at Dan's team as a whole, when you get rid of your second fastest Pokemon in the form of a Keldeo, then it may just cause strains on your team building, because you may just be forced to run Choice Scarf Heracross for him in a match, because or else your team would become too slow. And it's because of that I see it not working out for Dan in the future, if you ask me. Because quite frankly, like I said again, Keldeo is his second fastest Mon. And other than Jolteon, which cannot hit hard unless it is Life Orb, I really don't think Dan made the right call on this one, because Keldeo is, once again, I'm probably saying this for the 69th time, but Keldeo is literally his fastest Pokemon. Second to Jolteon, of course. And in my humble opinion, it works much better as a revenge killer, because Choice Scarf Keldeo is extremely hard to outspeed, mind you. Whereas when you run Choice Scarf Heracross, other Choice Scarf users can actually outspeed it and just flat out kill it. And in all honesty, that is exactly what I see coming back to bite Dan back in the butt one day. And not only that, but by losing his Fortress and his Muck, his only two fairy resists are Victini and his Mega Aggron. And that too is extremely bad, if you ask me, because these two Pokemon don't have any sort of recovery. So this might just cause more strains in his team building, and will give him less liberty to run whatever variant he wants on Sylveon. So if you take all these factors into consideration, it pretty much is putting you in a very bad spot, if you ask me. So all in all, up to a certain extent, I actually see where Dan is coming from, but on a huge basis, I also don't agree with the changes he made. I personally would have just gotten rid of Fortress and gotten Blastoise in the process, and Muck 2 for Smeargle, while still keeping Keldeo, because in my humble opinion, Keldeo is much more effective in the league format, if you ask me. And with the structure of Dan's team, I really don't think that taking Heracross might work out very well for him in the future. However, in the end of the day, it all comes down to how he plays his Pokemon, and if he plays extremely well, he is gonna go very far with it. So we'll just have to wait and see, don't we? So yeah, that's basically it for the free agency trades right here, right now. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching, guys. Do let me know in the comment section down below what you think of Dan's trades, and whether you agree with it or not. So with that being said, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.